my friends, it's your old pal Jordan the Lion. How you all doing today? I hope you said well. I'm doing great. Jaw's laying in his calming bed and he's doing great too. We're riding through Georgia on our way to a town called Griffin. We're going to talk about a famous dentist and gunfighter today. Daze with Jordan the Lion begins now. I'm telling you, that calming dog bed was maybe one of the best things we could have ever got that guy.
All right, we've made it to Griffin. There's a little bit of controversy to the grave that we're going to see today. Some people don't actually believe that the person that's buried there is buried there.
All right, I think we found the cemetery we're looking for. This mausoleum here has video cameras. I wonder why. If they've had problems out here before. That's funny, the street's called Five Wives.
I believe we're looking for block 11.
Oh, there we go. He's got to be on this lane, right?
All right, we found block 11. And then they kind of make it a little easier because they have a big giant plaque right down here in front of the graves. You probably know this man's history most from Dodge City. Probably actually more well known for Tombstone, the gunfight at the OK Corral. And I'll tell you why there's some dispute. But this, supposedly, is the final resting place of Doc Holliday. John Henry Holliday. Now, the story on this is that it says, during his adventures out west, Doc Holliday received a notorious reputation as a gambler and gunfighter. When speaking of Doc, Wyatt Earp purportedly stated, "I found him a loyal friend and good company. He was a dentist whom necessity had made a gambler, a gentleman whom disease had made a vagabond. In reality, he was a dying man and nothing could be done to extend his life." John Henry Doc Holliday died November 8th, 1887 at the age of 36 in Glenwood Springs, Colorado from consumption, also known as tuberculosis. Years earlier, the same disease claimed the lives of his mother, Alice Jane, and adopted brother, Francisco Hidalgo. Local lore claims that after hearing of his son's death, Doc's father, Henry Holliday, traveled from Valdosta, Georgia, westward to Colorado. Legend continues that Henry brought Doc back to Griffin to be buried in his hometown. This unmarked plot has been identified by some Holliday historians as the possible burial site of John Henry Doc Holliday. Additionally, some believe that the second unmarked grave belonged to Henry Holliday, who wished to be placed in eternal rest next to his son, despite their estranged relationship.
So Doc Holliday definitely has an interesting story. He was born as, well, he had an older sister who died at childbirth, so he was raised as an only child. And his father was a war hero. He had been in 3 wars, and when he came back, he brought back Francisco Hidalgo, as you saw in there, his stepbrother, basically. Well, he brought him back because he was orphaned, and he was a fantastic marksman, so he was the one that made Doc Holliday the excellent shot that he ended up becoming. Now, of course, like I said, his mother in the plaque said that she had contracted tuberculosis and eventually died of tuberculosis. And after that, Doc ended up going into dentistry. He went to Pennsylvania and had high marks going to a school of dentistry and came out, went back to Georgia, and then ventured his way out to Dallas to start a practice. But unfortunately, he also ended up having tuberculosis and the constant coughing and illness made people not want to go to see him as a dentist, and that's why he ended up turning to the life of gambling.
History has been kind to Doc Holliday, partially, a lot of people believe, because of Wyatt Earp. After, everything was said and done, Wyatt Earp ended up out in Hollywood and got his story made into movies from the stories of the gunfight at the OK Corral. But where their story, Doc and Wyatt Earp, really kind of started was in Dodge City, because Doc was out, like I said, making his living as a gambler, and he had been arrested many times. He was always on the run from the law and was a pretty accomplished faro player. It was a card game back then, and would also be a dealer. And so when he was in Dodge City, he was dealing faro, and Wyatt Earp had come through looking for wanted fugitive, basically. And he was 400 miles outside of his jurisdiction, but he was out there because he wanted the reward. And he had found out that while he was in Dodge City, that Doc Holliday knew the fugitive he was looking for, and Doc gave him some tips as to how he could catch him. And so he didn't end up catching him. And then on a trip back through, apparently Wyatt Earp was in a card game and had a gun pulled on him, and Doc Holliday walked up behind the man that had the gun on him, put the gun to his temple, and saved Wyatt Earp's life. So apparently that's where the story of them being true blue friends came from. Now, when Wyatt Earp made his way eventually out to Tombstone to be the sheriff out there, he called Doc and invited Doc to come out there because he said that they needed a good dentist. But a lot of people believed historically that the reason Wyatt Earp was actually wanting Doc Holliday to come out is because of his ability at faro. And he knew that they could make a lot of money off that town and swindle a lot of people, basically. So then, as we know, the gunfight at the OK Corral happened, and Doc was involved in that. And it wasn't because he, had this high regard for upholding the law or anything. He was helping his friend out, Wyatt Earp. And he had also, apparently the story is that Doc Holliday had heard that there was this, the people that they were going after had been spreading rumors about Doc, saying that that his girlfriend was a prostitute and that Doc was responsible for robbing a couple of people. And so that's, within 30 seconds, this gunfight became historical lore. And Doc Holliday's first shot was the first lethal shot of that famous gunfight. It took place in basically that vacant lot next to the OK Corral that we have went out and vlogged in Tombstone together.
Now, like I said, I kind of feel like history has been kind to Doc, because in the history books, he wasn't really a real good guy. He got into a lot of gunfights with people, sometimes for the color of their skin, sometimes just because he didn't like them. There was one story where he gutted a man, basically like cut him right up the chest, because the guy wouldn't play faro by the rules that Doc played by. So he ended up, as the plaque said, ended up making his way out to Colorado, where he eventually also succumbed to tuberculosis. But that was why, when Doc found out that he had tuberculosis, a lot of times that was, basically a death sentence back then. He had heard that if you went to drier weather, that you could possibly live longer. It was better for you. So that's what took him out to Dallas. And then he kept making his way westward, being in New Mexico, Colorado, Arizona.
Very fascinating story. I can actually believe that he would be buried out here. His father definitely would have had the means to do so, to be able to move him, being a 3-time war hero. But one of the reasons that they didn't really get along was because Doc was close to his mother. She was the one that taught him how to kind of be a Southern gentleman. And his father, being the war hero, taught him all the survival skills and everything. But when his mother passed away, Doc's father married a woman that was just a few years older than Doc, who was one of their neighbors, and that kind of didn't sit well with John Henry Holliday, Doc Holliday. So a good reason why they would be unmarked is because, various times in his life, a lot of people were out looking for Doc Holliday, trying to get their revenge on things that he had done. So not too surprising that there's no name on top, and his father probably made sense to not put his name on there, because then it would be, rather identifiable. Now they put this plaque up, and it says with permission of the Hopkins family. So they probably believe that anybody that could possibly want to cause any damage or destruction is probably long gone by now. And like I said, you know, history basically, because of the movies and the books and everything, kind of paint Doc Holliday as a hero. It's kind of like gentleman hero. But you might be wondering, well, if he was moved here, why wouldn't, you know, the other places that claimed that he's buried there, why would they not tell the truth? Or, you know, what's the story on that? Well, a lot of times, Jesse James is the same way. Jesse James has multiple graves. And, you know, there's, in his case, people believe that he faked his death and ended up in Texas and passed away under an assumed identity. But in this case, probably the reason why there are multiple graves is because where he was originally buried was probably a tourist attraction. It gets a lot of people to come out there, and so for that reason, same with Billy the Kid. In fact, I think all those guys have quote-unquote multiple graves. It's a good draw for the town. It's, you know, brings people out to see a historical gunfighter like we're doing today. So if this is in fact his grave, I guess rest in peace, Doc Holliday. Well, my friends, we're going to call it a day. Thank you all for watching. I hope you enjoyed today's vlog. When it comes to the history of these old gunfighters, you just never know what you're going to uncover. There's so much mystery involved in that time period that I just, you know, I love coming out and kind of exploring all the myths and legends to these people. Thank you all for watching. I hope you enjoyed this. And if it's your first time watching me, please hit the subscribe button. Please hit the bell notification. We'll see you all next time. Have a great night and goodbye.